Welcome to Season 2 of Ventures and Visionaries, Episode 8, Building a Business in Today's Marketplace. This podcast is about vision, entrepreneurship, or namely business and innovation. I'm your host, Morty Hackel. Welcome to the show. Our guest today is Borja Cuan, co-founder of 415 Digital. Welcome, Borja. How are you today?
Hey, Morty. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate you coming on board. I think we're going to have a great conversation about all things marketing and how do you build a business in today's marketplace. But maybe before we get started about that, maybe just give us a little bit of background and, what made you decide to start a business?
Yeah, I think, based in California, that's where I'm actually taking this podcast. But I wasn't born in California. I was born on the East Coast, a small town west of Boston called Northborough. Was raised there, great parents, 3 siblings, went to college in Boston. And it was right out of college that I started working for an internet startup. And this is back in 1998. So that was my first taste of internet marketing, if you will. And I never left the industry. Been in the industry for now 27 years. And been a business owner for 9 years. I started my agency with my co-founder back in April of 2017. And why we started it was we both were working in-house for a company based in San Francisco. It was a SaaS company. And we were both part of that growth marketing team and overlapped for 2 years working on projects together and managing a budget of about $120 million annually in media spend. We got to know each other and became friends and shared a lot of similar interests as it relates to business and entrepreneurship. And I left that company, and shortly after I left, my business partner, Mike Nelson, had approached me with the idea of starting this agency. Here we are 9 years into it. We both felt there was a better way to do it. There were a lot of agencies out there, some of which were good, of course, but many were underwhelming. And we had experienced that underwhelming service from them. They had been very good on sort of the sales side of things, but then once it was time to deliver the service, we never felt it was at the level that we could deliver. So we both saw an opportunity there, despite entering a hyper-competitive market.
So that's a great question on if you enter a marketplace. So obviously we're going to think about this a little bit more expansively than just agencies, although agencies are certainly a good case study. But it sounds like what you're saying is that a hyper-competitive marketplace may still have windows of opportunity that can be exploited if you think about them properly.
There was an opportunity that we saw. We were not even talking about the possibility of failure. We had an extreme confidence in our capabilities. We had unique skill sets to bring to the business that we felt were very complementary. And so from our standpoint, we knew that we could grow this business. We didn't know exactly at that time how big this business could become, but we absolutely felt in short order we would be able to match the income we were generating by working in-house, and then not too long after that start sort of exceeding it. So we were confident. We had relationships, we had the skill set. We had a lot of entrepreneurial just mindsets, right? We both kind of had worked closely with founders of companies. We had, seen what it was like to scale a business. We had impact roles at these organizations. And we said, why don't we take all that experience coupled with our network and launch this agency? And by the way, I'm sure even though we didn't talk about this between us, we knew that, in the back of our minds, worst case, it doesn't work out, we just go back to work, right? There was always a plan B. Not that we discussed it and not that we actually thought that was going to happen, but I'm sure we were very confident that no matter what, we'd land something.
Ventures and Visionaries is grateful to be sponsored by KJ Technology. For over 25 years, KJ has helped middle market businesses unlock growth through strategic technology advisory services. Whether you're a fast-moving alternative financial firm or a boutique wealth management office, KJ delivers tailored managed IT solutions that scale with your ambitions. And for those who only demand the best at home, KJ brings enterprise-grade network technology to high-end residential environments, blending performance, security, and vendor management from the boardroom to the living room. KJ Technology is redefining what it means to be connected, protected, and empowered. Learn more at kjtechnology.com or email for information at info@kjtechnology.com. And that sounds like a very good approach for most entrepreneurs who are perhaps a little bit more scared of taking that initial leap into the abyss. So I think that, like you said, having some sort of a plan B can provide somebody who's a little bit more risk averse with a little bit of comfort, while somebody who's perhaps a little bit more or a little less risk averse, that's a double negative, but a little less risk averse may just go ahead without needing that second plan. But maybe while we're talking about those early years, maybe share with me some of the early challenges that maybe you experienced or saw, and what did you learn from it? I guess what I'm asking for is for our listeners who are perhaps contemplating a change of career or jumping into starting up their own business, what kind of lessons from those early years can you share with this audience that can help them as they start to think about, moving into a different direction?
Yeah, I think what I would say to someone who has an interest in starting a business and they're in a very comfortable place right now, working for a company, making good salary and get health insurance and benefits and all those things is, yes, that is not a bad option, but there's alternatives too. And, just like I said a few moments ago, that will always be there for you, right? So if you're doing well in that area, and you decide to start a business and it doesn't work out for whatever reason, you can always go back to what you were doing. So it's not a permanent thing. It's something you can attempt and put everything into it. But worst case scenario, there's always a backup plan, right? It's not a permanent thing. So I would say definitely be passionate about whatever it is you're going into business for. Understand like, why are you doing it? It has to really excite you because I think you have to love what you're doing. Otherwise, it's going to feel like work and it's going to be very difficult to sort of get through the difficulty of what it is to have a business, right? The ups and downs, so to speak. So if you really like what you're doing, then hey, when you get a curveball or when something doesn't go according to plan, I think, you remind yourself of why you do what you do, and that usually gets you through some of the more challenging times. So for me, it was something I loved. I loved the idea of starting a services business. I knew I had a lot of background in service. I worked in hospitality. Then I worked in client-facing roles for various companies that I had been a part of. I felt like we could do that well. We could elevate the service game while still driving performance. And so I knew that was something I enjoyed. I was passionate about it. I also felt like there was a lot of opportunity to do it better, and we had comps on that. And so, I think in the end, I encourage people to do it, but also, make sure that you go in with a real understanding of what it means to have a business. It's not necessarily glamorous. It will require you to make sacrifices. You're going to have a lot of days where it's not good news, right? Whether an employee leaves you or a customer leaves you or you don't get the deal you had hoped to get. But all of that is normal, right? It's not unique to my business. It happens to all businesses. And so as long as you're someone who understands that it's not sort of a linear path or a very smooth road throughout the journey, yeah, I think, I would encourage people to do it again, providing they have the right mindset going into it.
It's funny that you say that. I always thought that as a business owner with multiple clients, my risk profile on my income was actually more protected rather than being an employee. Because, yeah, maybe I'll lose a client or not get a deal, but I still had other clients who were potentially providing income that would help offset those, challenges or downturns or, or frankly, even setbacks before they get out of the gate. I'm glad you mentioned that. Wanted to ask you to please drill in a little bit on the comps. I think that was interesting that you mentioned that because I mean, it was sort of when I went out into my business, I kind of just went in without really knowing what the marketplace was like. But you, as somebody who worked in marketing, perhaps have a better understanding of how you actually measure the market opportunity. Can you maybe speak about that and how you would think a little bit about opportunity triage? Because, I mean, I suffer from almost shiny object syndrome when it comes to opportunities. There's so much here. I'd love for you to unpack that for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that when you go into business, and I think this is something that I have seen as mistakes in business is expanding too much too quickly. So not focusing on why you started the business. Meaning for us, when we kind of launched 415 Digital, we had a lot of experience working with agencies, and as I mentioned, the sales process was very sophisticated, very smooth, very impressive. And then when we started working with the client services team, the team that actually was responsible for delivering on the service that was promised to us by sales, we just didn't get it. It didn't match what the expectation that we had was. Meaning, not only was the performance underwhelming, the performance of the campaigns that were being run, but also just the basic customer service, right? People not responding to emails, people not answering questions that were asked, people, that didn't understand our needs and sort of the goals and objectives that we had. And and again, not to say that every agency was like this, but we had a lot of experience having worked with a few different agencies over our career collectively, and that was sort of the experience that we had. And so when we started 415, we said, hey, we want to be a paid search agency. That was what the focus would be on. It was our core competency. And that was, decided by both me and my co-founder. But then as we sort of evolved, not shortly after launching the business, what we realized is, hey, we're going out, and I've always said, I don't want to be a jack of all trades, master of none. I want to be very clear with the market positioning on what we are good at, right? I don't want to say we can do it all, because I oftentimes say, oh, when I meet someone who's a specialist in a trade, electrician, for example, and they say, I'm a good plumber, I'm a good roofer, I can lay concrete, I always say, oh, well, which are you good at? Like, you can't be all of these things, right? You have to be really good at one of these things. If so, which one is it, right? So we decided at first we were going to be a paid search specialist, right? We were going to be providing that service to clients. But over time, what we realized when we had a seat at the table talking to different businesses is they were looking for more than that. And for us to win or earn the business, we would have to diversify our offerings. So while we started with a single SKU, you could call it, right? One single service offering, what we realized quickly and had to pivot to is offering more than just paid search. So for us, it became paid social, right? So in addition to Google, we'll be managing your Meta campaigns and your LinkedIn campaigns and any other social marketing campaigns. So we evolved with our market sort of position and said, okay, we're a paid media performance marketing firm versus a paid search performance marketing firm. And that allowed us to really expand the opportunities that we were seeking, because, oftentimes people are like, well, we don't want to work with one agency for search, one agency for social, one agency for SEO. We want to kind of consolidate the number of partnerships we have. So we kind of viewed it as, let's focus on what we're good at and never veer from that, because I never wanted to be, we can do everything. If it's not a core competency, if it's not something we consider ourselves to be A plus in, we will not provide that service. We won't sell that service to a customer.
So yesterday I was talking to a number of other peers and we were discussing the concept of a goal and how oftentimes people talk about a goal. I want to build $100 million company or whatever it is that they're building. And that's really the measurable. That's not the goal. And I think you spoke right now about the goal. The goal was to be the best in a particular industry or a sub industry and having that core competency as a good thing to do. Or rather the thing to do. There's a lot of value in being so specialized. So tell me a little bit more, please, how you evolved both your service offering, expanded it without compromising your core competency, and at the same time address the issues that you said were oh so prevalent, which I thought was only in IT, that people didn't respond to emails and get back and provide poor customer service. It sounds like this is much more of a bigger issue. So maybe how do you, as you scale the business, maintain the warmth and the responsiveness, the relationship building, and all that?
Yeah, it's not easy, is a short answer. It does require a lot of commitment to, on the front end, finding the right talent, right? Finding the right people to join your company. So when we interview, we're also sort of having to sell ourselves, no different than a candidate trying to sell themselves to us, right? It's like we're both feeling it out, right? They want to see if this is a type of company they want to work for, and vice versa. We're trying to see if they're going to be a good match for our company. So really for us, it all starts with how we source for candidates. What are the things that we're looking for in these candidates in terms of qualities, characteristics, um, and you know, we are not always successful in that. That's been sort of for us something we've learned throughout the years. But even now, it's hard, right? You're interviewing someone, you have all of these things that you incorporate into the interview process, exercises and tests and this and that. And still, right, until someone's in the role, um, dealing with the fast-paced environment and working on real accounts, it's very hard to see what exactly happens and how they respond. So for us, we are very, I would say, structured in how we onboard, develop, and train people. It's a big part of the success of our business. It's the investment we make in team, and that is a lot of training, which we're very good at. So when you join this company, no matter what, everybody's getting a lot of training and development from us. Some of it's on demand, some of it's live, but we're spending a lot of time with the team, making sure that they're sharp in all the areas they need to be sharp in, right? And by the way, even if they come to us with experience, what we found is they still need training, right? Nobody has ever peaked in their sort of career in terms of skill set, hard or soft. And so we're always finding opportunities by working with the team to identify what are the areas that you as an individual wants to improve upon. Like, what do you want to get out of this journey at 415? What are some of the goals that you have for yourself, right? And a lot of it for people is around training and development, right? It's a lot around, I want to get better at this craft. I want to get better at customer relationship management. I want to get better at learning Google and Meta and all of these other platforms. So for us, we prioritize that because we know there's a direct correlation with job satisfaction and fulfillment, and people seeing the growth, right? The improvement, right? Getting better, getting more knowledgeable, being able to handle client calls and QBRs and things like that. So I think as you scale, it's really important to never neglect investing in the team and just being focused on the day-to-day problem solving and customer service. You have to take a step back and you have to make time to do training, and you have to make time to review mission, vision, value statements, like work with the team on these things. Like, why do we do what we do? What is your impact to helping us achieve the overall company goals? Reminding people that no matter what your role is for this organization, it's important. It's not less important than someone who's in a more senior role. It's just different, right? And so, it's we're not perfect at it, but I think we invest a lot of time on client services, training and development, because ultimately, in our business, the teams on the front lines are working with our customers every day, and that's a big part of customer retention. Is, you know, I always say, what is different, or how are we different than our competition set? Especially when we're in a commoditized space, hyper competitive, a lot of agencies, we all sound the same in terms of what our value proposition is. What I try to say to people, and what are the goals that I have when I'm trying to win business, is to show people that the experience with us will be different, and convey to them that the experience with us will be better, and that we're going to care more. So it's all about like how we approach that prospect during the sales process to give them that feeling of, yeah, I think this experience with 415 is going to be unique. It's going to be better than my prior experience. And they're going to care more about the success of my business. And they're going to be a partner through good and bad times. Because if I just go through a PowerPoint and I talk about all the brands I've worked with and how much media I've managed, I'm going to sound like everybody else. So I'm trying to make a more deep connection with this person and have them leave these sort of initial meetings feeling like, yeah, it will be enjoyable to work with them. They're smart, they're ethical, they're hardworking, they have domain experience. I think they'd be the ones that would give us the highest probability of success.
It really sounds like you're touching on some significant core issues, both in terms of having the right person in the right seat, making sure that as we recruit people, we're finding the right people who can plug into a right person, right seat. I was curious if, in your experience, there are any key traits of people that plug into this service industry a little bit better than others.
I think for me, I'm looking for a lot of things related to mindset when I hire people. It's attitude, it's focus, it's ability to adapt, it's having sort of a half glass full mentality. So being optimistic, being positive. Um, a lot of it is, in business, we're dealing with a high pressure environment. This is not necessarily for everyone, because we are in professional services, and the clients that we work with in some cases are multi-billion-dollar companies. Um, and the individuals within those organizations that we're working with are under a lot of pressure to grow. They have goals that are tied to their compensation, and they have to grow the business. If they don't grow the business, it reflects poorly on them. And a lot of that trickles down to us. So when you're in that position of working with customers that are in that state of mind, that are in that sort of, pressure environment, I'm looking for people that are able to handle that, right? And a lot of it is, yes, you need hard skills, but it's really, for me, a lot around the interpersonal soft skills area that really I put a lot of weight on, more than hard skills. You do need a certain level of hard skills, and that is all something we train on if you don't have the experience. And you need to have a certain level of intelligence. I mean, you have to learn things and learn them quickly, or at a pace in which we're moving. But more than anything, what I feel is, when I interview people, is, I ask myself, is this someone that I'm going to enjoy working with? And most importantly, will my customer really enjoy the working experience with this person, right? Are they going to be someone that my clients will really enjoy working with? And, and in order to be someone that you enjoy working with, I think you have to have the right attitude, right? You have to have the ability to focus. You have to be very clear in the way you communicate. I think you have to be very good at listening. I think you have to be good with people, and that's what I usually find the gaps to be, or the areas where people lack, or they say, hey, I feel like I know the platforms, I know how to use them. That isn't the area that I need help on. It's more around just like customer or account management. It's like, how do I build trust? How do I push back on clients? how do I, tell a client that I don't agree with them, right? Even though they're the client and they're paying us, we are not being hired to tell them what they want to hear. Instead, we're supposed to be telling them what we believe as experts is the best thing for their business. And oftentimes that doesn't align, but we have to tell them. It's our job. Now, they can overrule us and they can disagree and say, we're going to do what I said, even though you've given us your point of view. But at a minimum, it's our job and our responsibility to give them our point of view very directly and clearly.
It's you touch upon so many very, very valuable lessons, including making sure that the right people have the right mindset and attitude and personality, as well as being able to speak truth to power and being able to learn quickly while at the same time understanding that the tools and the hard skills are different from the soft skills and you need to invest in both. Maybe we just drill in for a second on the hard skills, and maybe even the soft skills. I don't know, but like I'm assuming you, like most other companies these days, are some combination of hybrid and remote workers and stuff like that. How do you train young people who are entering the workforce today? And I know you speak about a very strong and rigorous training exercise. So much of the training that I received back in the day was water cooler experience, tap on the shoulder, asking questions to people nearby and peers who had more experience than I do. And I would imagine that in a hybrid work environment, it's a little harder to accomplish that. But what do you think about that, and how do you address that?
Yeah, it is harder. In particular, as you mentioned, I think for the younger generation, people that are early in their careers, recent college grads, um, I'm a strong advocate of being in the office for the reasons you just stated. When I started my career, when I was 21 years old, now I'm 49, I can't imagine having had the success I have without having been in an office, right? Back in 1998, the concept of work from home wasn't really a concept. People weren't working from home. They may have been hired as remote employees. We had salespeople that were remote, but if you weren't one of those positions, you were in an office and you commuted an hour, right? And I'm not saying we can't evolve and change the way we do business and we can't make things more flexible for people. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that my experience has shown me as a business owner that people that work remotely full time, even when you implement different ways for them to connect and stay abreast of company information, they just learn at a different pace, right? It's slower. They're a bit more disconnected. What we're doing here on Zoom or Riverside is not the same as you and I doing this in your office, right? It's just not the same. It's a different experience, right? And it's not bad, but it's not as good, right? And we shouldn't try to convince each other that this is the same because I think that's just silly, right? If you meet someone in your personal life, you might meet them on a dating app, but how do you cement the relationship? You don't marry someone unless you've met them in person, right? Like there comes a time when you really need to be in person and really kind of get to know people and build deeper connections. So I think for me, I'm competing with other companies that require or that offer a lot of flexibility. So for me to be able to attract talent, I have to concede in this area. And where I ended up for my business is really hybrid. So we allow the team to work from home twice a week and be in the office 3 days a week. And that's sort of the compromise. And we're seeing that work out pretty well. I know that if I had asked my team, do they want to work from home full time? They'd all say pretty much yes, maybe a few exceptions. But I think directionally, that's what people prefer. But I think oftentimes we don't know what we don't know. So when you're in your early 20s and you're sort of starting your career, unless someone has given you this sort of advice, I don't think you realize the disservice you're doing to yourself by not being able to be in an office and overhear conversations and ask questions in the kitchen while you're getting some water, or just these random impromptu opportunities that present themselves with managers and founders and leaders, where you see them and you're like, hey, I can, because even though I would never have a meeting with this person, they're here next to me at the photocopy machine or the fax machine or the water cooler. I'm going to ask them a question. But if you weren't in an office, you would never overlap with them. You would never be in
Never.
the same meeting. You would never see them. But because you're there, you can introduce yourself and you can ask them a question, or you can say, hey, would you be interested in a cup of coffee? I'd love some mentorship. And that's what I did early in my career. I really took those opportunities of mentorship and coaching because I was in an office and people, got to know me and I introduced myself. But again, if you're remote, how do you do that? If you're out of sight, you're out of mind. It's not an opportunity that will present itself. So we've seen people that have come to us having worked remote for 6 or 7 years, and man, they're so much further behind than our current cohort. The folks that are working for us, and we see it, and they even acknowledge it. They're like, "Yeah, I was getting comfortable. I was getting lazy. I didn't realize how much of a disadvantage this is until I actually was in a position where I'm really behind."
Right. It is unbelievable just how much gets accomplished in an ad hoc fashion when you're around people. And even on the most basic level, as you mentioned before, I can ask you, Bora, how was your day? Or what's going on in your life? Or I can see in your face that you're looking happy or sad or perturbed. And I have the ability to bond with you. It may not be more than 2 minutes, but I can make you feel felt and vice versa. And that's how relationships get started. It's really a major detriment to not be physically in proximity with other people.
I agree. I mean, there are a lot of
Yeah.
studies there, and we've seen a lot of the tech companies and financial service companies that are coming back to the office. They've
Yeah.
let go of their low performers. I mean, it's. I think a lot of the recruiters have a narrative because I think their jobs are easier when they're recruiting people that can be anywhere. But I do think um, being a hybrid model is better than all remote, just because then it gives you time to build connections. And the examples I would give are, I have lunch with my team when we're in the office, right? We go out, grab a cup of coffee in the afternoon, and it's a 20-minute break, and we're just talking about things that we otherwise probably wouldn't get to talk to because it would require us to schedule a call or get on Zoom. So there's all these little breaks that you get mentally that is nice with your colleagues. And I think lastly on the topic, I would say it's not necessarily the same for everybody. I think, as you get older, I'm, 49 years old, I have kids, not that I work from home because my office is only 5 minutes from my home, but I have friends that are more further along in their career and they value that, but they've put in the time. So it's not the same, right? They're not in their 20s, they're in their late 40s or early 50s. And, it's a little different, right? Now they'll still go into the office, but I think they've sort of developed some of the skills. They've developed the network. They are not the same as someone right out of college who has never experienced corporate life and really needs to benefit from being in an office to experience it.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that, while certainly all people who've invested significantly in their home offices during COVID and now actually may have a workspace, many young people, if they're in an apartment and they're now in a one-room studio that is their kitchen, their bedroom, and now their office, and they don't leave that space pretty much ever, how is that healthy? I don't know how that's healthy.
I don't think it is. I mean, I think, I love getting up, getting dressed, taking a shower, going to work, just not being, in my, I mean, everybody's different. I just think there's something about being around other people. There's an energy, it motivates you, right? No different than I like going to a gym that is full versus empty, right? I get a lot from being in a gym. It motivates me. It inspires me. I benefit from the energy, right? So I think it's similar in a business environment. Like when you're around people and you observe them and you see them and you're like, okay, right? Other people are working, they're hustling, they're here, right? They're not sitting at home in the comfort of their bedroom or their home office. Like they're out and about, right? They're talking. I think there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah. So let's move from the area of people to how no one can have a podcast or a conversation anymore without discussing the big elephant in the room, that being AI. And I'd like to run a phrase that I've been hearing a lot recently by you and see what you think. The phrase is AI is not going to replace people's jobs. People's jobs will be replaced by people who use AI.
Okay.
What do you
Um,
think? What do you think about that, and what do you think about the industry in general? And how does that play a little bit in the space that you're in? Obviously, you're in the technology marketing space, so it's
yeah.
probably impacted fairly quickly in terms of hard skills and soft skills, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been exposed to AI for a while, right? Working with machine learning and algorithms on Google and Meta. So for us, it's not a new concept. What I would say in terms of AI is we are on the train. It's something that we believe in, that we are embracing. um, uh, it's not displacing jobs for us, right? For agencies like 415 Digital, AI is not a replacement, it's an amplifier, right? So agencies that embrace um, AI are going to provide a better service to their customer, right? Um, and that's how we think about it. It's not a bad thing, right? Our customers are benefiting because we're using or leveraging AI in ways that allow them to scale campaigns, right? So before you'd have a designer, your designer would create an ad. It would take time, right? Now there are tools out there where we can leverage to create ads at scale very quickly, right? Same with content. There's a lot of ways to a lot of what we do around ad messaging. You can leverage AI for that, helping you come up with taglines and ways to position this product, and um, even creating blogs and such. Right? There are a lot of benefits of it. Now, what I caution people with as it relates to AI is more around uh, understanding that it's a tool and you have to know how, when, and why to use it, and that it could work against you. No different than, to me, social media or anything that is like a distraction. Like AI overuse or abuse could work to your disadvantage. And what I mean by that is it's only as good as the inputs. So whatever the output is, you really have to maybe override and quality control it, whether it's creative, whether it's content. You really have to make sure that you don't just take what it spits out and send it to a customer, right? Because if that's the case, then what do they need you for? So I think there's that human intervention element that's super important when it comes to AI, and making sure that it's like a 1 + 1 = 3 thing. And then the other thing I would say that I have called my team out on is really around just and I worry about this for people that are young, is just the ability to critically think. Right. I think now everybody's kind of going to AI, and for every question they have, how do I reply to this email? I need to send an email. I need to write a proposal. And I think that's good. Like, I think there's good that you can go somewhere and you can get maybe jump off points, or you can get someone to help you. But it does make it different than when I had to craft an email, right? I had to figure it out on my own, right? Or I had to, put sentences together. And there's just some things that if you rely on it too much, I wonder how you're going to be in a situation when you don't have internet access or you don't have access to Chat GPT, right? You're in a live meeting with a customer. You have to think on your feet. You're not going to be able to go to Chat GPT or Claude. They're going to just ask you for your point of view on something, or you have to come up with an idea, and you're not used to thinking or challenging your brain. What happens in those situations, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, agencies that embrace AI early can operate leaner and more strategically. And we are one of those agencies where we're like all in with AI, and it makes sense. But I think we spend a lot of time kind of coaching our team on um, examples of when you should be concerned with AI, including, hey, you're sending an email to one of our clients, make sure that you write the email, or if you use AI, you definitely have to interject, because I had an example in a team meeting yesterday where someone had shared a screen, and the document they were reviewing, I asked at the end for them to be very careful. Good thing it's not client facing, because this person, the way they wrote this was so formal, and the vocabulary words that they used aren't even within their range, because I've talked to them and I know what their vocabulary range is. And it had a formality to it that just came across as not authentic and not
Right.
them. And I said, this is my concern. If you sent this to a client, they would question where this came from. They'd say, you obviously didn't write this. So if you're not writing it, what are you doing? So it's, if you want to create authentic relationships, you have to bring your authentic self. And that means you can't be using AI to send emails.
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful perspective. And I was going to go a little bit more into the idea of creativity, which I think you probably have a very powerful perspective on as well, especially being in the industry that you're in. We obviously are thinking about things and we are creating things on the fly. And you mentioned meetings. Talk to me a little bit about how you think about the creative process and its evolution as people are now using, for lack of a better term, tools to help spur ideas, and maybe brainstorming takes a different form. But just curious what you think about all this.
Yeah, I think um, I would say, for years, creativity was seen as something that a machine could never replicate. But in marketing today, I wouldn't say AI is replacing creativity, it's reshaping it, right? It's giving people the ability to leverage a tool um, and create a better output. So I've even, used some of these tools, right? And I found it to be pretty, I can say, hey, I want to create this ad. I input, a piece of creative, and I wanted to, I give it some suggestions, and then the tool spits out 4 or 5 options for me. And because I've played around with it, I'm not a designer and I don't remember actually the tool that I used, but I was curious to see how this tool worked from a creative standpoint, right? Creating an ad for a campaign on Meta for one of our clients. And I said, here's the client, this is the offer, this is the type of customer they want. And it's really interesting what came back to me. I mean, on one hand, I really appreciated it because, again, sometimes you need jump off points. Sometimes you need people to collaborate with. And in this case, I didn't need to call a meeting with my designers. I was working with a tool. And through that process, working together, we actually got a pretty interesting output. So I think, but it was a process, right? It was me and the tool. It wasn't the tool could have done what we did without my input. So I think I think you still need to be creative. You still need to give it a jump off point. You still need to, be very connected with the client and the advertiser, their business, and what they do, and all of these things, because there are some nuances and things that might be personal or unique to that business that the machine isn't going to know, right? And I think it's those inputs that will make the experience, the output much better. But you really need to be the one in there, because without that, I don't think it's going to have the full picture of context.
I love that. I love that. I always think about creativity, in two different maybe phases or areas. One would be, for example, Isaac Newton discovering calculus. That just like appears almost magically out of nowhere. On the flip side, you have the iterative process where we kind of like, you take something and then you evolve it and evolve it and evolve it and evolve it. And by step 17, no one recognizes where you came from, but it's something almost completely new, and it appears to be, as if it appeared out of magic. And maybe Isaac Newton did that too. I have no idea. I wasn't there and I've not asked him. It would be nice to have him on the podcast, but hey, what can you do? Um, but speaking of this kind of stuff, are you tracking any emerging technologies? Like what do you think is coming in the next 5 years?
I mean, I'm not tracking anything that I would say. I mean, AI is really what we're talking about is kind of the most buzzword thing right now. Beyond that, I mean, we work on the platforms and we're working natively on these platforms, so we're not even using third-party tools most of the time when we're working with these businesses. I mean, in some of the businesses that we work with are, 7, $8 billion revenue businesses. So for us, it's Google, it's Meta, it's TikTok, it's LinkedIn, and keeping abreast of all the product enhancements. Right, some of these technologies or tools or platforms are changing, and so for us, being a very I would say premium or premier partner for Google and Meta, we do get a lot of exposure to kind of what's up and coming or betas. And I'm not the technical one, but I know, for us, it's really about staying abreast on sort of what is changing within Google or Meta or the platforms that we're buying on, because that's really where the budgets are sitting for the clients that we work with. And so anytime there's a change on Google or any of the buying platforms, it I think really for us, things get more competitive, things get more expensive, the game gets harder, but we're still kind of we're doing great.
What do you think about? Firstly, congratulations. But what do you think about the future of many of these big tech companies that built their success, if you will, on eyeball shares that then get advertised and monetized that way, whereas the eyeball shares are going to start moving into spending more time interacting with an LLM, almost like a chatbot or various other agentic stuff. And is that going to be an opportunity for some of the next version of the entrepreneurs or a company like yours to start moving into ad buys within the LLMs?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam Altman just said they're going to start selling advertising, if I'm not mistaken. I think I read that yesterday, right? I think OpenAI it was, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think no, I mean, I think for Google, I think for Meta, all of these platforms will continue to grow. I think what we're doing is just introducing new players to the space as alternative to advertisers, right? So no different than now, we are buying on different platforms. Each platform has a specific audience. Advertisers are testing, experimenting, right? So I think if you start, leveraging LLMs, like it's just another opportunity for someone to get in front of the prospective
Mm.
customer. So it doesn't really, I mean, Google maybe takes a hit, right? But because someone is now redirecting or deploying that investment, otherwise going to Google to something else. But I think there's just they're accounting for that. They're aware of that. They're making their own sort of plans. But at the end of the day, it's good for us because as a business right now, if we're managing about 300 million a year, 230, 240 million goes to Google. So for me, my concentration of risk is very high in Google, meaning they control a lot of the revenue that we generate. So I like other entrants to the market, meaning I like alternatives to Google for my clients because we don't have to have this huge reliance on Google, right? So just more options, maybe better options, frankly, maybe better performing options for our clients, which means maybe Google needs to, get better, or they need to make some changes. They're not the only player in the space or only option, right? So for me, more competition is healthy. I mean, you've seen complaints around these monopolies, right? And it's like, hey, I'm good with alternatives for my dollars to be deployed.
Right. This is all great points. Bora, before we wrap up, are there any passion projects that you're working on that you'd like to give a shout out to or highlight? I know we all work really hard and spend a lot of time at work. So,
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I'm a father. I have two young children, so I when I'm not working, honestly, my priorities in life are in this order: family and health are number one. They're equally important, and then it's business, and then my close friendships. Um, So when I'm not working, I don't really have a passion project, but I enjoy certain activities with my kids. I like to play golf and play pickleball and travel with my family. So there's nothing outside of, 415 is plenty challenging for me. And there's so much opportunity to grow this business that outside of that, where I try to redirect all my energy, is kind of the family.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. There's only so much time. Borja, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Lots of insights, lots of very core wisdom on people management, growth, technology, building a business, and how to think about growing your business. If people are looking to connect with you, how would they best reach out?
Yeah, I can be found on LinkedIn, Borja Cuan. Also, you can go to the website 415, that's FOUR15digital.com, and learn more about our company, service offerings, some of the clients we work with. There's a form you can fill out, and we'll provide happy to provide a free audit of your marketing programs if you fill out that form.
Amazing. Borja, thank you so much. Ventures and Visionaries is grateful to be sponsored by KJ Technology. KJ Technology sits at the intersection of business and technology by providing technology advisory services, such as aligning business goals to technology initiatives. Their plans create coherence between the business people and the tech team supporting them. They provide cybersecurity oversight and proactive process solutions design to solve your real-world challenges. For a complimentary consultation, please email info@kjtechnology.com or call 646-556-6500. Thank you, everybody, and have an absolutely wonderful day.